welcome to a very special interview with the former President of India, Mr. Pranab Mukherjee's first interview since he stepped down as President in July this year. And the occasion is the release of the third volume of his memoirs, The Coalition Years 1996 to 2012. Welcome, Mr. Mukherjee, to India Today TV. Thank you very much for joining us and congratulations on yet another book. Let's start with this book because it's a very interesting period that you're looking at, 1996 to 2012. And I want to start with a chapter which I think in a sense was a critical phase of this 16 years, which is 2004, which is the year the UPA comes to power for the first time. You all are in a position to form a government. Sonia Gandhi is the leader of your Congress Parliamentary Party and she decides, according to
Not
her...
only Congress Parliamentary Party,
the UPA.
She was also decided to be the leader of the UPA.
That's right. But she decides not to, therefore, take charge, not to become Prime Minister. Did that take you by surprise?
Yes, it was surprising to me.
It
was a surprise to me and to most of the leaders of the party.
The reason I'm asking you is that in the book you say the popular expectation, once she had stepped down or chosen not to become Prime Minister, was that you as the senior most leader would be asked to become Prime Minister. Did you have that expectation?
Not me, but a section of the people thought that as I have come to Lok Sabha, I may be chosen, but I did not have any expectation because I knew my limitations. It is not merely whether I am a member of Lok Sabha or not. My another deficiency was not my proficiency in Hindi. And I do believe that to be the Prime Minister of India, one should be proficient in Hindi, the language of the masses.
Interesting you're saying that to be the Prime Minister you should be proficient in Hindi, because you say in that particular chapter that you were reluctant to actually serve under Dr. Manmohan Singh initially.
I did not tell anybody or anyone, but some newspapers, some channels, they interpreted it that it would be difficult for Pranab Mukherjee to join the government. And I did not contradict anyone. I did not see it also.
You know, the reason where I'm coming from is that the senior most leader does not become the Prime Minister. Manmohan Singh, who had served under you in the 1980s, becomes the Prime Minister. And the question therefore comes, did Sonia Gandhi fully trust Pranab Mukherjee and therefore did not make, this was also the speculation at the time, that's why you were not even made Home Minister, you were made Defence Minister, because you say in the book also, you would have preferred perhaps to become the Home Minister. So was there a trust factor that you suffered from, and this dates back to the 1980s and your troubles also with Rajiv Gandhi?
I do not know whether any trust factor worked or not. Only Mrs. Sonia Gandhi can answer to that question. But so far my not joining the government was concerned, it was never pronounced by me. It was a speculation of some media persons as it reflected. But Mrs. Gandhi, when she asked me to meet her, she made it quite clear that I shall have to join the government, and Dr. Manmohan Singh was also present there. And they say that from the very start, if you do not join the government, it will be a weak government.
Therefore, they chose not to make you Home Minister. They chose not to make you Home Minister at that time.
Distribution of the portfolio is the job of the Prime Minister, and being too seasoned to ask Prime Minister for a particular portfolio.
You know, in the book, there are three moments in a way where you could have been Prime Minister, or you suggest you might have well become Prime Minister. One is 2004. One is 2009 in January when Dr. Manmohan Singh has a heart bypass surgery. And the third is in 2012 where I find very interestingly you seem to suggest that there was a possibility of Dr. Manmohan Singh becoming President and Pranab Mukherjee becoming Prime Minister. And yet on all three occasions you did not get the top job. Is that a regret?
No question of regret. As I told you, that being in politics and seeing both ups and downs, not once but on several occasions, I was too seasoned to expect anything or to regret anything. I took it as it came to me.
The reason I ask this is because there was the media speculation that Pranab Mukherjee is very much his own man. Therefore, he will not, in a sense, be someone who will serve in a system where there are dual power centers, 10 Janpath and 7 RCR as it was called then. While Dr. Manmohan Singh was more than willing to do so, he was not even elected to the Lok Sabha. That was the difference. You say Hindi speaking was what was your deficiency. How would you respond to those who say?
I am reminding you, this was said by Kamraj.
Kamraj. I know it was said by Kamraj in the 60s, but was it also because in a coalition government and a government where Sonia Gandhi was not willing to be part of, Pranab Mukherjee was not seen as someone who would be willing to accept the domination of two power centers?
These are all media speculations, and I cannot contribute in any way to clarify the media speculations.
So you don't accept my proposition that Dr. Singh was chosen over you as Prime Minister because he was more malleable, he was more pliable?
I will say that it was a good choice, and it is not saying for the first time. I already spoke at that point of time when somebody asked me, maybe you or maybe someone else. I said that it was a good choice because from 1991 Dr. Manmohan Singh have acquired reasonably good knowledge of party functioning in Parliament because he was the leader of the Rajya Sabha.
So you don't accept the proposition that he was a weak Prime Minister, remote controlled by 10 Janpath?
Not at all.
Let me come to the governments that you served under, the coalition. You say this was the coalition era. And I want to understand from you, Dr. Mukherjee, because you've served in a majority government under Indira Gandhi, you served in a minority government under Narasimha Rao, and then you served under two coalition governments with Dr. Manmohan Singh. Would you say that in India, coalition governments are more difficult to manage and therefore do not provide good governance? Do you believe you need a majority government to provide good governance in this country?
There are two aspects of this question. The coalition years, because if you look at the scheme of my writing these memoirs, 3 volumes of my memoirs, I started with my entry into Parliament in 1969. I end it when my membership in Parliament comes to an end with my election to the President as the President of the Republic. President himself is integral part of Parliament, but that is by the constitutional provisions. He does not take part in the parliamentary activities on the day-to-day basis. Therefore, 1996 to 2012 is the coalition era. I am saying it because first volume I named as Indira years.
Yes.
Second volume I named as turbulent years. So years are coming in these decades. Third volume is coalition years because coalition government not formed by Congress in UPA 1 or UPA 2, but before that there was coalition government of under Devegowda, I.K. Gujral, backed by Indian National Congress, left parties and others. There was coalition government led by Atal Bihari Vajpayee, NDA, 98 to 99, 99 to 2004.
Yes.
And 2004 to 2014, 2 years I am not covering in this volume, I am covering up to 2012 because I was defeated to the office of the 13th President of the Republic. So 12 and 13, these 2 years managing the coalition was not the responsibility of me.
So that's what I'm asking you. Is managing a coalition good for governance, or is the majority governments of the Indira Rajiv years, or indeed now that we have with Narendra Modi, better?
It is a theoretical position.
What is your experience? Which was easier to manage?
Let me complete. You don't have this habit. I am sorry to tell you and remind you, you are interviewing the former president.
Yes.
Please have the necessary courtesy.
Yes, sir.
Don't interrupt. I am sorry to tell
absolutely.
you. I am not eager to appear on the screen
Sir. No, I
You
just
have
want to understand.
invited me. Firstly, you cannot raise your voice.
My apologies.
I am answering to the question. So, whether coalition government is a better or single party majority government is a better is a political theory.
No, I take your point, but you were finance minister, Mr. Mukherjee, in the Indira Gandhi years. You were also finance minister and external affairs minister and defense minister in the coalition years. I am trying to understand from you which you believe was easier to manage, which is better for India in your view, a majority government or a coalition government?
Of course, a majority government.
A majority government is better.
Single party majority government is better because 1977, when with a great euphoria, ruling party was defeated under the leadership of Jayaprakash Narayan, Janata Party came. They had very decisive and clear mandate, and they already formed all the constituent units formed into a single party,
Pre-poll.
Janata Party, pre-poll. But it did not last. Therefore, and majority of the coalitions did not last. How many governments you had from 77 onwards, 77, 81, 91, 89, 91, VP Singh, then Devegowda, then Gujral, and last 10 years, last 16 years, you had two governments, one led by Atal Bihari Vajpayee, another 10 years government led by Dr. Manmohan Singh. So, from the stability point of view, single party majority is always desirable.
Because, you know, one of the challenges that you faced, and you mentioned that in the book, is to accommodate all these varying interests. There are conflicting interests. And that presumably was your biggest, one of your biggest challenges. Because what you don't write about in this book, interestingly, is the alleged compromises that your government at the time was accused of with these coalition partners. I want this ministry, I want a specific portfolio. And that, many believe, led to eventually the erosion of faith in UPA 2 in particular. Do you believe that is part of the problem of running a coalition, as we saw the compromises you have to make on issues like corruption as well?
You know, coalition itself is compromise. When you agree to compromise, then it is possible to have the government. For example, the selection of the ministers. In a single party majority, where the leader has the majority through his party in the house, he has the option to choose his own colleagues, ministers. But in the coalition government, invariably, the ministers are chosen by the participating parties. Allocation of portfolios, sometimes the very foundation of the coalition starts with sharing the portfolios before the coalition comes to take the power. Therefore, coalition government, as Prime Minister in the single party majority government, has total control over the cabinet, over his ministers. In coalition government, it may not be possible always. So, you shall have to compromise some of the basic principles of parliamentary democracy, depending on this leader of the house or single party majority.
Is that what happened between 2009 and 12?
Every coalition, it had its problems.
Did they get accentuated in that period between 2009 and 12?
Every coalition, it had its problems.
The DMK said, I want the telecom ministry, where there were then serious allegations of corruption, and all of that eroded public faith. Because in your book, interestingly, you end in 2012, but that period from 2011 to 12, where there was the whole Anna Hazare agitation, where you, a leader of your stature, had to go to the airport to receive a Baba Ramdev. Were these the kind of compromises you believe that in the end brought down the UPA?
No. UPA...
Do you believe that was a mistake that you made?
No, UPA...
Do you regret that?
...was defeated in the elections because of certain reasons, various reasons. I am not going to analyze that. I have looked at the Anna Hazare problem from a totally different angle. why I agreed to preside over this group of ministers negotiating with 4 nominees of Anna Hazare, including himself. Till now the perception was that legislation is the exclusive domain of Parliament and Legislative Assembly or Council. But here Indian democracy is manifesting itself in a different way. Some NGOs or some non-official bodies demanding that we want a particular legislation, they themselves are drafting it and asking and urging the government that you accept it. So Anna Hazare's movement, whether it is against corruption by one institution like Lokpal, the corruptions will be evaporated. I am not going into these aspects. Anna Hazare's movement, to my mind, was a demonstration or in another way of Indian public democratic opinion.
But as a constitutionalist, surely you will feel that it eroded the supremacy of the cabinet system if 3 or 4 cabinet ministers have to go to the airport, I come back to meeting Baba Ramdev or being part of a joint drafting committee with these NGOs. Was that all an erosion in a way of the executive authority of government?
No. You may call it erosion.
Yes.
Classically, definitely it may be erosion, but at the same time, it is also making an experiment with a new emerging situation. I do not remember. If you remember it, you tell me. So far Ramdev is concerned, it was a totally different issue. I wanted that already we are having one agitation from a man who has gathered a section of the public in his support. If he is added with another agitation led by another man who has already established his influence over a group of people through his yoga practice. So if it could be avoided by talking to him, that was an attempt. Attempt was futile, no doubt. Whether it was good or bad, that's a different value judgment. But these two issues are not equal. Negotiations with Anna Hazare was from the viewpoint of that a section of the civil society is asserting itself on a particular piece of legislation.
Can I come to the question of the 3 years between 2009 and 12 when you are brought back to the finance ministry and a very difficult time, a time of a global economic slowdown, a crisis, and managing the economy becomes the biggest challenge. Would you say in hindsight, those were the 3 most difficult years of your long tenure in public life?
Look, not necessarily. India is a developing economy. Every finance minister at every particular point of time will face some challenges. Today, governance itself is a big challenge. Therefore, in the complex situations, with the disruptive technology, when new technology, always it brings disruption. And the governance of the day is always to adjust itself with that disruption. And when you adjust yourself, you find another disruption is coming through the form of technology. Besides that, a developing economy like India, in the 50s, we had no problem of foreign exchange because British government, they borrowed huge amount of money during the war and India had huge sterling reserves. Then the problem was of refugee rehabilitation. Finance minister had not to face the problem arising out of foreign exchange crisis. 70s, late 70s, when the oil crisis took place, second oil crisis. 73, first oil crisis. 78, second oil crisis. 80s, we had to face the acute foreign exchange problems. 90s, we had to face the acute foreign exchange problems. Finance minister at that point of time had to face those problems. IMF loan was signed.
But the problem that you had to face was very different because you had to face a global economic slowdown and you had to push in fiscal stimuli and many said that Mr. Mukherjee found himself always under pressure in that period. And then when you brought in that retrospective tax legislation, as you mentioned in the book, even within your own party, you found yourself isolated. Again, in hindsight, do you believe that your handling of the economy, your decision on retrospective taxes, for example, which many believe pushed back the economy, were the right ones? Or do you believe it's easy to be wise in hindsight?
Unless till no finance minister thought it necessary to remove it from the statute book.
Which you mentioned in the book again.
After me, there had been at least 2 finance ministers. They could have easily, I brought amendment of the finance bill. Another amendment to the finance bill in any of these years, it could have been changed. Why it was not changed?
Because you're very honest in the book in saying that there are your perception of the economy was different in a way to Dr. Manmohan Singh and Mr. Chidambaram. You're
No, that's a different issue. You are jumping from one issue to another issue.
Yes.
First, you try to understand what is the significance of the retrospective amendment of the Taxation Act. Apparently, it sounds that it is draconian, but not so. If you go through, series of finance ministers have resorted to retrospective amendment of taxation. Taxation laws, when interpreted in the by the court in a way where there is a fear of outflow of resources from the exchequer to implement the decision of the court, then to prevent that action, the retrospective amendment of taxation has resorted to. Earlier, it may be necessary to resort to this amendment of retrospective tax in future. Because to prevent the outflow of resources from the exchequer. As a result, in Vodafone case, as a result of the Bombay High Court's judgment favoring the interpretation of the income tax department, large number of companies paid taxes as per the interpretation of the income tax department.
So you don't think it was a setback for foreign direct investment into the country as your critics saw it, and you have no regrets?
Figures speak of. Why should I speak of? You find out what was the inflow of FDI those years, 2010, 11, 11, 12, 12, 13. Figures of FDI inflow will speak of it. So far, now coming to the more basic questions, what was the economic environment? Economic environment, you are correct, that it was extremely difficult. Because of the lack of demand, my export went down for 11 months before the 2008 financial crisis emerged.
See, even today, the finance minister finds himself in a way under pressure. The state of the economy. How do you see the state of the economy today?
I would not like to make any comment on the government, because technically it was my government till the other day. I refuse to comment on it that every action, even political, I had the tacit approval because it was recommended by my government or it was suggested by my government till the other day. 2 months, 3 months have not yet passed.
When you say my government, I presume for the viewers you mean the Narendra Modi government as president.
Of course.
So
it was my government, Dr. Manmohan Singh's government from July 2012 to May 2014 was my government.
So in a sense, decisions whether they are demonetization, whether they are GST, are all decisions in a sense that you believe are of your government.
Of course.
And you don't want to look at it through the partisan lens of a Congress leader.
Not at all, not at all. It will be very unfair on my part.
You don't want to tell the viewers what are the challenges that today governments face. For example, 15 lakh young Indians are coming into the job market every month. Providing them that kind of jobs. You come from a small village. Agrarian distress, sir, is a huge problem. Farmer suicides are increasing. Are these the problems that worry you at times?
Problems are there, no doubt. And if there be no economic growth or higher desired level of economic growth, if there be no job creation, employment generation in the industrial sectors, service sectors, naturally there will be problems, there will be sufferings. I am not blind to this. But the question is, I cannot make any comment on any specific policy or specific issues which are of recent origin. Till when I was in the government, President's house, because technically only one person can address the nation by saying it is my government. When I address the members of the parliament, umpteen number of places it is mentioned, A to Z, that speech is drafted by the cabinet. But it is have to be said, it is my government.
I'll come.
Therefore, I cannot and I should not make any comment on this.
How do you see the Congress party today? Do you see it as a party which has a future, or do you believe it is a party which has to reinvent itself? You went through the glory period of Indira Gandhi. Do you believe this party now is a party on the decline?
You know, in long 132 years history of Indian National Congress, there have been ups and downs. Congress have been split. Not recent split I am talking of. 1907 it was split. It was split in a small way in 1930s after Subhash Chandra's victory over Pattabhi Sitaramaiah, creation of Forward Bloc. Exodus took place from Congress in the late 40s, early 50s. Kripalani left, Dr. P.C. Ghosh left, Socialists Jayaprakash Narayan and others left. 1969 there was split. 1978 there was split. I am mentioning that Congress party had to face series of problems at different phases of time. But it has been possible for them to revive. There is a resilience in the party. Therefore, there are problems, no doubt, but at the same time I have hope and expectation that it will revive, it will readjust and reinvent itself.
So you don't think it's become a family-run party, a dynastical party, a party which has lost touch with the common man and is a party in decline?
No, these, what you are talking of, these are the signs of the declining. And party, what I am saying, that party has the capacity to adjust with all situations and to reinvigorate itself in course of times, and it will do so.
Do you think Rahul Gandhi is the right person to do that?
It's not a question of the individuals. It's a question of the systems. Who will come at from what point of time? Who will provide the leadership?
But should there not be a fresh energy, fresh talents coming in rather than one family? You know, in Indira Gandhi's time, it was perhaps different. Politics was not as competitive. Now you've got politics much more competitive. No, but now you've got the BJP, which is seen as an election machine today, compared to, you know, Mr. Chidambaram told me the other day, Indira Gandhi had to face Morarji Desai. Now you've got the Congress which has to face a Narendra Modi.
No, I am not going into the personalities. I am not going into the personalities. These are symbolics. Question is that whether the Congress party has the resilience or not. Congress party has the resilience. So far the question, transfer of baton from one generation to another generation, it is not now. It took place in 1930s. After Calcutta Congress, in Lahore Congress, baton was passed from Motilal to Jawaharlal Nehru. Therefore, I saw from time to time, phases to phases, in the long history of Congress, there were many problems, insurmountable problems. But
has it not become a family party, sir? Does that not worry you? As someone who came up as a grassroots worker in a way, should the party be monopolized by one family?
It has always provided leadership from the grassroots.
So should there be new leadership?
Congress is not confined only to one section or one. Congress is a mass party.
Because today Rahul Gandhi may well become the president of the Congress even without an election. Because
election
he will be
taking place.
Yeah, but now, he will be nominated without a proper election. So I'm wondering whether that's the right way to run a democracy.
Congress has its own form of election, own constitution, and as per constitution of Congress, election is taking place. It is on the process now.
Let me ask you one final time on this question. Do you believe that the Congress party, when you say reinvent, needs to find a way in which to spin, to have a new narrative? Because there is a feeling that the Congress's vision of secularism, that the Congress's vision of even non-alignment, the Congress's vision of politics is now is losing its sense of purpose in a way. This is a party which is a banyan tree.
I am interrupting you. The party which could brought the major economic legislations in 1991 after following the public sector culture from 1956, don't undermine that party.
But the traditional Congress leaders that you spoke about, the P.V. Narasimha Raos, the Pranab Mukherjees, they don't seem to exist today. There's a new generation which seems to be in a way struggling to find its feet. The reason I'm asking you this is, I think you know where I'm driving at. What is your advice to Rahul Gandhi? Should he quit politics? Should he stay the course? Do you believe he is good enough, equipped enough to...
It's not a question of assessment of individual. Let us forget about individuals.
Yes, but the party itself.
Party has its capacity.
And how would you describe your relationship, therefore, with Prime Minister Modi?
No, it was excellent relationship. And I told when the release of the Statesman's coffee table book, it was on record, I said on the microphone, that it is not that we did not have divergences or disagreement. But both of us knew how to manage this disagreement and how to keep it within ourselves.
But not all your political party persons of the Congress would have appreciated that approach possibly.
No, it may, because after all, presidential function is a constitutional function. It is not, it is political, but not partisan. There is a difference.
But there are congressmen today who maybe never reconciled to the idea of Mr. Modi as Prime Minister.
They will have to reconcile. It is the mandate of the people.
As someone who's been the first citizen of the country, what worries you as you look ahead? Is it communal disharmony? Is it Pakistan? Is it the Kashmir issue? Is it poverty? Is it this crisis of joblessness? What is it that worries you today?
Poverty is the basic thing which is a problem and which is a challenge that will have to be overcome. And Indian identity is to be upheld. It can never be compromised.
What do you mean by Indian identity? Do you mean this plural, multiple identities of Indian Hindu-Muslim relations?
I'm just summing up.
Yes.
That is my perception of Indian identity. When I shut my eyes and look at India, map of India, and I find before my eyes 1.3 billion people. In their everyday use, using 100 languages and dialects, every day, practicing 7 religions, a vast chunk of them belonging to all 3 major ethnic groups, Caucasians, Dravidians, Mongolites, yet living under one constitution, one system, under one flag. That is Indianness. And that Indianness is to be preserved. And that can be preserved only by celebrating diversity, by respecting others, and by always becoming tolerant.
But are you positive about the India of the future as a result? Do you believe India is a country which is on the rise? Are you, as I said...
Of course, and India, if India vanishes, nothing remains.
Finally, do you have any regrets at the end of this long career in public life? Will I see a 4th book on the presidential years where you will write openly about maybe possible areas of disagreement that you had with the government, be it on demonetization, be it on issues like mob lynchings?
Look, these are you are in your just enthusiasm, you are mixing highly serious issues to trivials. It is not that. The issues are, as I told you, that India is a much larger concept than what we feel or we come across in our day-to-day narrow spheres. As I mentioned, and I still continue to believe in that even this volume may have that criticism that why are you not speaking enough?
Yes, you are being very diplomatic.
Not diplomatic, I am not speaking enough. I am just using that phrase. Sunando used it for the second volume. That why Pranab Babu is not speaking enough. I am not speaking enough because I don't have that privilege. And it is wrong to compare between government and individual. Government in its wisdom may think of declassification and bring out public the information so long it was not accessible to them. Government as a whole can take the decision. I have no quarrel with it. But as an individual member of the government, I will never like to do it. It will have to be buried with me or it will have to be burnt with me. Some information will never come from me. If government in its wisdom some days declassify the documents of those days, that is different issue. Government is much bigger.
And maybe when it does, I will come back to you to ask you a few more questions, Pranab da, because it's always been a privilege asking you questions and getting your answers. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rajdeep. Sorry for I became little rude to you.
No, you must never. I always take that as a positive statement. And that's Pranab Mukherjee, the former president, someone who has seen India through all the highs and lows over the last half century. His third volume of his memoirs is out. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.